before we go into anything further, I'm going to explain the voting procedure. There are a few things that you will be voting on. If you have a blue name tag, you will be allowed to vote. If you have a red name tag, you're non-voting guests. If you have any questions when it comes up, please don't hesitate to ask. And now, I would like to ask the board members to introduce themselves, starting on my immediate left.
Hello, I am Lendra Barker. I represent Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador.
Bonjour, I'm Linda Saint-Hilaire from Zone 3, Quebec.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Nesbitt from Zone 5, Eastern Ontario.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Oslodge, Zone 2, New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Gilmore, Zone 9, Saskatchewan.
Hi, guys. I'm Corinne Walker from Manitoba.
Yay!
Good morning. I'm Sharon Derrick, representing Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Bruce, and I represent Interior British Columbia and the Yukon.
And for those of you who don't know who I am, and you wouldn't because I'm not from this area, I'm Joan Bennett, and I'm from BC Southwest. Now I'd like to received regrets from 3 of our directors who had other commitments prior to this being set up. Richard Paquette, Zone 4, Ontario North, Paul Eckford, Zone 6, Ontario West, and Peter Laventhal Wolfish, Zone 7, Ontario Central. I'd like to introduce the following people if they're here. From Agriculture Canada, David Truss. Our Audit Committee Chair, Tanya Hutton. The past Audit Committee Chair, Murray Botro. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Appeal Committee Chair, Rob Lindy. A past Chair of the Board and a past President of CDJA, Thora Brown. Our CKC Auditor, without whom we couldn't exist, from BDO, Marcus Sconsi. Jerry Taylor, past Director and a past Honorary Chair of the Canadian Kennel Club. Okay. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Corinne and her Zone 8 volunteers who have given us a great, great hospitality days. Next on our agenda is recognition of members who have passed away since the last AGM. This is always a very sad time, and we'd like to ask for a moment of silence. Now on a lighter note, we'd like to recognize our 50-year members. These are people who have been members of the Canadian Kennel Club since 1969, who live in Manitoba and have continued to make outstanding and positive contributions to the club. The dedication of the Purebred Dog Fancies, their dedication serves as an encouragement to you all. Thank you for your commitment. And I would like to ask Lance and Corinne to help us here. Mimi, Crystal. Oh, there we go. The next person I'd like to honor is Roberta Tugas. Jody will be accepting the plaque on Bobby's behalf. I have a cheat sheet. I don't know what it is. And finally, Grace McDonald.
No, thank you.
Congratulations to all of you. Your work has been significant to this organization, and we appreciate every bit of your volunteer time. Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today for the 2019 AGM. This has been another busy year at CKC, and we appreciate the hard work that has been undertaken by the local members to make this event a real success. Thank you all for welcoming us into your city. I would now like to present our honorary 2018 chair, Mrs. Joey Natras, and thank her so much for helping serve the Canadian Kennel Club for her many years and as honorary chair.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I would like to share with you some of the highlights during my 71 years as a member of the Canadian Kennel Club and my involvement in the world of dogs. As a breeder and exhibitor, there were two highlights that stand out for not only me personally, but for my breed, the Chow Chow. At the Ottawa Kennel Club show in 1953, taking Best Puppy in Show with my homebred puppy was a first for me. More importantly, it was a first for the Chow Chow breed. Bet a lot of you weren't born then. Oops. 14 years later, in 1967, winning Best in Show All Breeds at the Ontario County Kennel Club show was the thrill of a lifetime, especially it had been almost 20 years since a Chow had taken this coveted award. This thrill and highlight was only surpassed when, as a judge, I awarded my first Best in Show. As a Canadian Kennel Club member, having served on numerous committees and councils, including the Dog Show Council and also the Judges Committee, where a panel questioned the person applying for a license. No open book. It was just questions from a panel of their peers. In the business world, I owned and operated a boarding and grooming facility, then for many years a professional show secretary service, which is still running today. I have served in various executive positions in all breed and specialty clubs. At present, I am past president of the Scarborough Kennel Club, on the executive of the National Chow Club, and the president of the local Chow Chow Fanciers of Canada. I was asked what advice I would give to young members. I'm not much good in the advice department, but I do have a suggestion. Be true to yourself and the breed or breeds you judge or wish to be in, and above all, win or lose, be a good sport. I would like to thank the many people, past and present, who joined me on this amazing journey. My year as honorary chair has been more than enjoyable. It has been the culmination of my life in dogs, for which I thank the board. Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of all of us, we thank, on behalf of everybody at the CKC, we really like to thank you, Joey, for everything you've done, a token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. And before we finish on honorary chair, I'd like to introduce Virginia Line of Saanich, BC, who is our new honorary chair for the year 2019. I'd like to introduce someone who is no stranger to any of us as our honorary veterinarian for 2018, Dr. John Reeve Newsom.
Good morning, everybody. And before you all ask, I'm doing just fine. What I wanted to talk today for a few minutes is not about scientific bullshit, which I'm sure you're inundated with, but that's funny. I wanted to talk to you about an age-old conflict, and it's not Melania and Donald Trump or the Israelis and Palestinians, but it is a conflict that I, as a veterinarian, deal with every day, and it's the conflict between breeders and, shall we say, the profession that is endowed to look after the pets. Okay. And we see that every day in practice. And there's a good book of veterinary cartoons, and it's a very statuesque, shall we say, woman standing at the veterinarian's table, the pets there, the veterinarians there, and the caption is, yes, I do have a special price for breeders, 25% more than anyone else. And that says it all. I think it arrives because veterinarians think they know it all, and a lot of breeders, unfortunately, with some exceptions, think they know it all as well. And so it arises conflict. As my grandmother would say, just because you can lay eggs doesn't mean that you can make an omelet. And some breeders, I think, are endowed with the, they think because they have bred a litter or more, that they have a sort of inbred knowledge of animal husbandry and the care of pets. That's not necessarily the point. I think both sides should be able to learn from each other a lot. As the veterinary practice changes, or the process of hiring veterinary students who become then veterinarians changes, veterinarians often emerge from vet school, and I don't think we'll go into the reasons for that, but at lunch I can tell you what my thoughts are. And so they come out of vet school thinking they know everything, and they're the gods of how pets and things should be. The breeders think, well, I've bred a lot of litters, I think I should know. So it raises a lot of conflicts, and we see that in my practice, which is a relatively large practice all the time. And a lot of it just comes from bad information, or from, I hate this, I almost said a bad word, the internet, which is the greatest disseminator of false information and false knowledge that there ever is. And people nowadays think, well, I saw it on the internet, it must be right, so this is what I have to do. So where we run into problems is people will come in with, I just bought this puppy, doctor, and he's had all his shots. How old is he? 6 weeks. And people haven't realized, of course, if they'd done the homework, a 6-week-old puppy will not respond to any vaccines. And so when we try to talk to them about proper vaccination process, they say, well, I read on the internet, or Dr. Dodds, who was a classmate of mine, says they don't need vaccines, which is wrong. Anyone who's lived through the parvovirus epidemic, if some of you are old enough in here to know that, realize how important vaccines and proper vaccination process. So it's kind of an education on our part to try to not dissuade what they've learned from the breeder, but try to help them understand the reason for proper vaccination and proper vaccination process. Both sides have a lot to bring to the table. I mean, the breeders have the hands-on experience, the experience of breeding, raising puppies, etc. So they have a lot to teach us. And I certainly, as a young man and a young veterinarian, learned a lot from experienced breeders. One was, some of you may be old enough to remember Shirley DeBoer. quiet, unassuming woman, never said a thing. Just mild. But she had a wealth of knowledge which she was ready to impart to me. So you can learn, both sides can learn a lot, and I wish, and I'll get into this when I'm done, you're timing me, what we can do to remedy or alleviate this problem as well. Also, we see breeders often, we all want to sell puppies, selling the wrong puppy to the wrong owner. I practice in downtown Toronto. There's nobody in downtown Toronto in a condominium should be owning an Irish Wolfhound. It just doesn't work. So it behooves the breeder to make sure that the puppies they sell go into an environment that's proper for their puppies as well. My favorite story about wrong dog in the wrong situation is some years ago, I had a client. She drove a beautiful little Mercedes convertible. She was blonde. She was very pretty. She used to go to Abu Dhabi a lot, and I don't think it was to collect for the Salvation Army. She had another occupation. She went out and bought a cute little white puppy. So she brought it into me, and I said, well, what kind is it? She said, oh, I just wanted a cute white puppy. The cute white puppy grew up to be a Commodore. Needless to say, there was not a lot of room for this industrial debutante, we shall call her, and the dog in the Mercedes. So again, that was very irresponsible of the breeder to sell someone in this situation a dog that was ill-suited for the environment that they, and it behooves all of you to make sure the dog is going somewhere that suits the ownership of this dog as well. Another one is, I had a wonderful client, older lady, somewhere between, shall we say, 60 and death. Wanted a dog, and I said, well, what kind of dog are you going to get? Well, I want a Siberian Husky. They're so beautiful. So she got her Siberian Husky, and depending on which way the dog turned, she ended up at Yonge and Eglinton or at the waterfront. The Siberian Husky decided to take her, and that's where they went. Again, totally irresponsible on that breeder's part to sell a dog of that type to this woman as well. But again, we all want to sell a puppy, and sometimes our financial responsibilities, let's call it that, overweight what we have to think of is in the best interests of the dog that we're selling, because hopefully the dog and this owner will have a lovely relationship for at least 15 or 16 years. Well, if I have anything to do with it, it'll be 16 years, we'll call it that. Okay. But again, we as dog lovers and dog breeders have a big responsibility to the future of all the puppies that we sell or the puppies that we place. And I think we all have to take that very, very seriously, because it's a lifetime commitment. Well, not our lifetime, maybe mine, but a lifetime of the dog. And this is where veterinarians, I think, and breeders get into conflict a lot of the time. Not saying breeders don't have a lot to bring to the table, because you all have years of experience, especially in animal husbandry, breeding, and especially whelping, because what you all probably realize by now, most veterinarians that are graduating now are, again, and I don't sound sexist about this, are female who have a different concept of owning a dog than a lot of us do. A lot of these young veterinarians, especially the ones who work for me, have never had a dog, never been at a dog show, have no idea what we do all the time. And so for them to be veterinarians I was lucky to have the background of growing up in the country, of what it means to raise puppies, nurse them, see them through their formative years and months. I think that's where most people learn a lot, and that's what behooves you as breeders to help veterinarians in a, let's say, a kind way, let's use the word kind, to learn everything they can about what it means to be a veterinarian and care for the dogs and care for the owners, especially that take these pets. People tend to believe almost everything they believe on the internet. So there's so much misinformation in the internet now especially about nutrition. Don't mention raw food to me or I'll explode. And other kinds of dog food. Well, this will kill them, that will kill them. I mean, most of it, some of it's quite good, I'm saying, but a lot of it, quite candidly, is bullshit. And you probably know that. And this is what you as breeders, when these people buy a puppy, can guide them in the right direction and encourage them to take the advice of a veterinarian they respect. That's the question. Find themselves a veterinarian that they have confidence in, who perhaps has some experience in animals and animal husbandry, and that's what's really important, is to get a symbiotic relationship that works well for the new puppy, the new owner, and the veterinarian as well. Finding a good veterinarian, though, can be very difficult, as we all know. Whether the only veterinarian I'd go to is myself, but.
Any good?
He's been around for a while, Tom. I've been a veterinarian now for, God, it's scary, 50 years, which is terrifying. It's hard to believe it's gone that quickly, but it does. And most of it, as a veterinarian, also involved in the world of purebred dogs. So it's been a wonderful symbiotic relationship. But both breeders and veterinarians themselves are looking for authoritarian figures. And so it's finding that delicate balance, which you as breeders and owners can encourage them to do. Help, especially the people with new puppies, on the right way. Get them to choose the right puppy, head them in the right direction, and give them solid, concrete information. Veterinarians are very skeptical often of breeders, and it often starts off as a very hostile, shall we say, and frosty relationship. We all have our ups and downs in any relationship. That any of you that are in relationships or married will know that any relationship has its frosty moments, shall we say. To change this, I have an idea, and I'm just going to throw this out to Madam Chair and the board as well. There's 5 veterinary schools in Canada. There's an excellent one in PEI. Who's the PEI lady? Great school, really good school. St. Hyacinthe in Quebec, the Ontario Veterinary College in Guelph, Ontario. There's the Western College at Saskatoon, and also there's a new school in Alberta. So what I would encourage the board, or the chairman of the board, or whoever is the power to be, to write the deans of these schools and see if they can get some time in curriculum to address the students about breeders, the breeders' responsibilities, and how the breeders feel about this, and work together to find a more harmonious relationship between you and us, as we say. I guess I was blessed because not only was I a veterinarian, but I also, for 50 years with Dr. Mead, breeding and showing purebred dogs. So I got the best of both possible worlds. And of course, when it came to breeding, showing, vaccinating and things, I was always right. So there we go. And he just took a back seat, and so I managed that part of it. But please, as a group, try to work on your board members to address the schools. I wouldn't even start at the school. I would address it to the dean of these schools and tell them what our concerns are about this hostile relationship that often exists between veterinarians and the pet owning public, and try to encourage them to assimilate into their curriculum at least a couple of speech times to do that. Years ago, I did it for the Ontario Veterinary School with Dr. Brian Wilcox, who not only was a brilliant professor of pathology there. He also bred and showed Belgian sheepdogs with Skip. And he would guess me, and usually a guest, often it was Mike Macbeth, who was, of course, we all know, never at a loss for words. She and I, that's a joke, dear. I know. To come and speak to the students, and it went over very well. But once Brian left the faculty of OVC, it kind of died a natural death. And it's something I think that should be encouraged, and I encourage you all to do that. Thank you.
Follow me. I'd like to thank Dr. John Reeve Newson for his presentation. At breakfast, I did ask him if he would take questions. He said, it depends what they are. At this point, I'd like to announce who our 2019 honorary veterinarian is, and it will be Dr. Greg Keefe, Dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, the Atlantic Medical Veterinarian College, University of PEI. Next on our agenda is the minutes of the 2018 AGM. Does everybody have a copy? Thank you. You will note that there is an addendum, and it's regarding the actions taken on the items that were brought up from the floor at that meeting. So I'm sure you've all had a chance to read every word. And on that note, I would appreciate someone moving the adoption of the minutes. And when you do, please give your name and where you're from, so Annette has a proper recording of it. Did you get that, Annette? Okay. A seconder, please.
Tom Alexander.
Thank you very much. Having heard that, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to ask Lance if there is any correspondence to come before this meeting.
No, there is not.
Thank you. Now I will introduce Marcus Sconsi, who's I was going to say not unknown to you, but you wouldn't know. We know him. We work with him all the time. Forgot where I was. Marcus will go through the financial statements for the audited financial statements for 2018. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I know I was already introduced, but my name is Marcus Sconsi. I'm an audit partner with BDO Canada. We're the external auditors of the Canadian Kennel Club, as we have been for a number of years. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the audited financial statements at a fairly high level. I know this isn't a room full of accountants, so what I'll do is I'll walk through some of the key variances year over year, and if there's questions at the end, either on the financial statements themselves or on the audit process, I'd be happy to answer them at that time. So I will start with page number 2, which is our independent auditor's report. That spans 2 pages, pages 2 and 3. I should also mention, I forgot that there are some paper copies over. If anybody would like a paper copy, we've printed a few. If you wanted to take notes, there's a few available, but we're going to be presenting it on the screen. So the most important paragraph here is the first paragraph, our opinion paragraph. That's where we're providing the opinion on the audit that we've performed. That, in our opinion, the financial statements do fairly present the financial results of the Canadian Kennel Club for the year ended December 31st, 2018. And scrolling down further on page 1 and getting into page 2, the rest of this report gets into the explanation of the various roles. So there's 3 main parties to a financial statement audit. One is management, who prepares the financial statements. The second is BDO, the independent auditor, who audits those financial statements. And then the third is those charged with governance is the term that's used, and that actually refers to the board and the audit committee, which is a subcommittee of the board. And they have an oversight responsibility in terms of both the financial statements themselves and the audit of the financial statements. And what you see on this page is just some explanation as to what an audit is designed to do in terms of some of the key areas of the audit. I won't go through those, but it's there if you'd like to flip through that. So on to the financial results. So the first statement is page 4, the statement of financial position. This statement highlights the assets and the liabilities as of December 31st, 2018, the year-end date. Some of the key variances you'll see up in the assets section from the prior year. You'll notice cash has gone up from $358,000 to $622,000, and short-term investments have gone from $3 million to $3.4 million. Those are both fantastic things to see. That is essentially the monies that are available for the CKC in order to carry out its strategic plan into the future and in order to fund some of the initiatives that are upcoming. So it's always great to see a very strong cash position. There is a separate cash flow statement that we'll go through in a couple of moments as well that'll highlight some of the details there. Some of the next big change is the accounts receivable that's gone down from 533 to 334. That's the third line under the current assets. That's about a $200,000 decrease. And the main reason for that is management has made strong efforts to improve collection, and it is working. As you can see, they've collected a lot of receivables relative to the prior year and converted those to cash. The next main item under the assets section is that last line, capital and intangible assets, the $995,000, which is up about $210K from the prior year, and that is related to the IT for You project. And as that system is being developed, we are capitalizing the costs related to that, and once it's in use, we'll begin to depreciate those costs. So down into the liabilities section, which is the bottom half of this page, some of the key changes, you'll see accounts payable is up about $150,000 from $443 to $598. And the main reason for that is that there is a payment to Pavlix, who is the vendor that is building the IT for You platform, that is being held until they reach a certain milestone that hadn't been reached as of year end. So management is prudently holding that until they reach the milestone, and that's causing the variance in that line. Then into the net assets, we'll cover those. There's a separate statement for those as well. So with that, I'll move to the next page. This is the statement of operations. So where the previous page talked about the assets and liabilities as of a point in time, December 31st, this shows the revenue and expenses for the year ended December 31st, so for the 12 months. You'll see that total revenue has gone up by about $70,000 from just under 6.1 to $6.15 million. The main driver there is the registration revenue, which is up about $40,000. That's the first line. And the main reason for that is there's been about a 1% increase in registrations overall, which is driving the revenue up. So great to see an increase in the revenues there. The next section is the expenses. So you'll see the overall expenses has gone down from 5.7 to 5.5. The overall is about $190,000 change as a decrease, which is great to see that management is proactively managing the expenses and looking for ways to reduce the expenses to create a greater surplus in the organization. Some of the main expenses that have changed year over year, you'll see the first line, human resources, has gone up by about $275,000 from 2.9 to 3.2 million. The main reason for that is there was a backlog in registration, so some overtime was paid to staff in order to work through that backlog, memberships as well. There was also some minor restructuring costs as well in there. Overall, I think a fairly modest increase there, and usually you do see a slight increase year over year in human resources costs. The next line, building expenses. It has gone from $699 to $534, so that's down about $165,000. The main reason there is the management has found a sublessee for the head office. Some of the head office space that wasn't being used, it's now being subleased to another company, and that's being netted against the rent costs in that line. Going down to the fourth line, IT support costs is down from $340 to $220. That's about a $120,000 decrease. There was some consulting fees paid in relation to the IT for You project last year that were non-recurring, and that's led to the decrease this year. And then the last one to cover is the communications expenses, down about $70K. You'll see $277 in the prior year, $206 in the current year. And there was a marketing campaign in the prior year to market the puppy list that was a one-time item, so now that's gone back to about the normal that you'd expect, around $200,000. So overall, as I said, the expenses down from 5.7 to 5.5, And as a result of the $70,000 increase in revenue and the $190,000 decrease in expenses, the overall surplus for the year, which is the last number and probably the most important number in these financial statements, is a $638,000 positive result for the year, meaning revenues exceeded expenses by $638,000 compared to $375,000 in the prior year, which is about a $263,000 swing to the positive. So on to the next page. The next page is the statement of changes in net assets. And what net assets are is the historical accumulation of revenues over expenses since the day that the CKC was founded. So the last page we just went over, it's the cumulative effect of that page from the beginning of time to December 31st, 2018. And within the net assets, there's a couple of things I'd like to point out. First of all, the second column from the right, the unrestricted, is a very important number, $2.594 million. So that is the surplus that is available to be spent on future endeavors as the Canadian Kennel Club continues into the future. You'll see about in the middle of that chart, the internally restricted for IT process improvement, the $323,298. That's money that's been set aside for the IT for You project, knowing that there's going to be additional upcoming capital expenditures, and the board has set aside $323,000 to help fund those future expenditures. And then there's a couple of other minor funds that I won't get into because they're fairly immaterial overall. But overall, we've got $3.9 million of total net assets, of which 2.5 are unrestricted, i.e. available for use for general operations as well as strategic purposes in the future. The next page is the statement of cash flows. I referenced this earlier. This shows the sources and uses of cash during the year. So I talked about the healthy cash position as well as the increased cash position. This shows where we generated cash as well as where we used cash. And the most important number here is that first subtotal, the $1.089 million. That is the cash that was generated from operations. So before we spent money on capital projects or other investing activities, just the operations of CKC for 2018 generated almost $1.1 million in positive cash flow. That's a very, very important number because without cash flow, you don't have the resources available to help fund future strategic endeavors or even to help fund the general operations going forward. And then you'll see the next subtotal is the investing activities. So $416,000 was invested in short-term investments, meaning that management was putting aside some of that excess cash in order to earn a return through interest income. And then the $410,000, the last line in that investing activities section, was used to purchase capital assets, which is mainly the IT for You project as we're developing the ERP system. So a total of $826,000 spent on investing activities, providing a net increase in cash during the year of $263,000. And I think more importantly, if you look at the cash and short-term investments together, they total just over $4 million and an increase of $650,000 from the prior year. So that is really the cash that is available to spend in the future. We generated $650,000 during the year, which is an extremely healthy position to be in. So that's great to see. On to the next pages. I won't go through these in detail, but I will highlight a couple of things. Note number one, the significant accounting policies here. These walk through some of the underlying accounting policies that helped develop the numbers that I just went through that BDO audited. The second paragraph, Canadian Accounting Standards for Not-for-Profit Organizations, that is the rule book, the accounting framework that has been followed in order to produce these financial statements. That is what all not-for-profit organizations in Canada must follow. So that's the rule book that we're following. And then the rest of Note 1 walks through how some of these transactions were recorded, because in certain instances there are alternatives available in order, for example, revenue recognition, depreciation of capital assets. There are different alternatives available to management, so this is spelling out exactly how those transactions have been recorded. And then the remainder of the notes, which start on page 10, I believe, with note number 2 through the end of the statements, These notes are providing additional disclosure and context for some of the numbers I just went through to enable you and any other users of the statements to understand some of the details about what's behind some of the numbers in the main statements. So that is it for what I was planning to go through. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. At this point in time, we need a motion to accept the audited financial statements, same as before, your name and where you're from.
I move the adoption of the financial report. My name is Pearl Humany, and I'm from Winnipeg.
Annette couldn't hear you.
Pearl Humany, Winnipeg.
Sorry. Can I have a seconder, please?
I second the motion. Ben Watt, Solution, St. Paul, Manitoba.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. At this point in time, I'd just like to say a few words about the year at CKC. As many of you know, I only took on this job in December. So I've had to go back through my old minutes and remind myself. As I mentioned earlier, it's been a busy year at CKC. As Marcus has reported, our finances are solid, right? Later, you'll be hearing from our Executive Director, Lance Novak, about some of our new and exciting projects, including branding at CKC events, our membership in the International Partnership for Dogs, as well, we are in the early development of a breeder certification program. And I don't think any of you were at the board meeting yesterday, but we did mention it there. During 2018, we rolled out our Judges Observer program, which utilizes trained observers for our judges. We were wanting to have some consistency from one coast to the other, and we trained a group of people who have been doing a fabulous job. Our partnership with CDJA in hosting the annual Judges Education Conference continues annually. Again, it's educating our judges and bringing them up to speed on any new rules or changes. Our Genetics and Medical Committee has formulated an infectious disease statement for inclusion in our policy. And our crown jewel, IT for You, is nearing completion. She's laughing at me. None of this could have been accomplished without the assistance of our staff and our dedicated volunteers. Our volunteers who sit on various committees and councils. We currently have full-time staff of 41 plus 2 on contract. Nothing's changed since I wrote this, okay? Our volunteers are kept busy, dedicating many hours to assist as members of 4 independent standing committees, 16 councils, and 14 committees, as well as several ad hoc committees which take on specific projects. A special thank you to all those volunteers who sit on these committees and councils. We truly appreciate your hard work and would be hard-pressed to have the accomplishments that we do have without you. Thank you. There is another group of hard-working volunteers without whom we couldn't function, and that are my colleagues here at the board table. Thank you very much. You put in long hours, take crap sometimes from people, and come up smiling. Your support has been greatly appreciated. I couldn't do my job without them. 2018 saw the continued growth of legislation at all levels of government, as well as from SPCAs and veterinary associations across the country that have brought challenges to the purebred dog world. As a result, we have established a number of task forces to address the issues and have been fortunate in a number of instances to be able to become stakeholders and have that status and get an inside track. I will now turn the floor over to our Executive Director, who will provide you with an overview of the part of CKC for 2018. I don't know why I want to keep saying 1918. Thank you.
I'm going to spend a few minutes, the limited time that I have, to give you as much information that we'd like to share and hopefully whet your appetite, because we'll have an opportunity for some questions a little bit later on. Before I do, I may repeat a few comments that Joan said, but I can't resist mentioning that my dad was from Nipawin, so I visited Winnipeg and Nipawin several times when I was very young and haven't been back very many times, but I want to thank Corinne and her team of volunteers once again. Certainly one thing that hasn't changed about Winnipeg and Manitoba is the hospitality and the charm, so thank you for that. I'm going to go through a few highlights and try and kind of pull them together in terms of certain themes. You've heard many times already that CKC remains, your club remains financially stable. We're in a good financial position. I'm not sure if it was actually said that cash position that Joan and Marcus mentioned allows us to know that we have at least 5 to 6 months of operating cash if we run into an emergency or a disaster. And for the nature of our business, that's a very good standard to have, not too much, not too little. But I also like the comment that it allows us and puts us in a position to really think strategically and consider investments in our future to continue to grow and diversify. But the reason for this is for many years now, our registration and event entries have been stable. After significant periods of steady decline, it's been a few years in a row now where we've had increases in event entries, increases in events, and most importantly, increases in interest to register purebred dogs. We're not happy with the incremental growth. We want that to get much larger, but at least we're headed in the right direction. I'm going to try and give you a theme of support or demonstration of support for you, the members, because it is your club and you make the club what it is. And one of the things that we heard over the past year is to provide more presence at shows. You are our ambassadors. You are the ones that will bring in new members and get other people interested in purebred dogs. One gesture in that regard that is still in pilot phase and launched in 2018 and continues in 19 is a greater presence through branding at shows, providing materials with some clubs that have offered to grow and work with us and learn through that process. It's got some hiccups, but overall we know it's been well received, and we plan to expand on that program in 2019 with that learning, and hopefully you and your clubs will be able to support us in that. Joan mentioned that we are missing a few board members at the AGM this year, and one of them is Dr. Paul Eckford. And Dr. Paul Eckford is at a conference in England, as Joan said. And the reason I bring that up is in 2018, the board supported CKC's membership in something called the International Partnership for Dogs. And in a nutshell, what this is an international not-for-profit organization of like-minded organizations with a common purpose of promoting the health and well-being of canines. The value of this membership is to share information, best practices, repositories and libraries of information related to genetics, emerging issues, maybe even touching on a lot of the things our honorary vet has mentioned. And another benefit of that membership is that Dr. Paul, our representative, has been able to attend a workshop. And our board has been monitoring his Facebook postings literally hourly about how excited he is about what he's learning and what he's seeing and what he's going to bring back to the CKC to help feed some of our strategies on genetics and medical issues and health and well-being of dogs. And I'll just throw in a side bit there. This organization is CEO. They're based in Sweden, but is run by a Canadian veterinary, Dr. Brenda Bonnet, who you may know, yes. Back to the office, when I talked about not being satisfied with our growth in registration and entries, a lot of work is underway. Every single year, we try to keep our hopper full of new opportunities that we pursue. Some go well, some don't go so well, but our board is very supportive of risk, calculated risk, in trying new things. Here's a few things that have evolved over the past year from the shows and trials perspective. Our event entries for 2018 were completed and published in the shortest time ever, as far as we can determine. 14 days into the following week, we were able to report all of the show results for the previous year. Events overall were 6% higher, although entries themselves were 1% higher, which we're pleased with. But we watch very closely. We watch these statistics and data. It can be very boring sometimes, but they're very important to us to assess what's behind those performances. Confirmation was down 1%. Obedience was down. But rally obedience and agility were up. So we're trying to assess what's triggering those positive and negative responses. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to introduce new programs, such as we did in 2018 with Sprinter and Chaseability. We have 32 programs. How many programs? But regardless, Sprinter and Chaseability, one, I think Sprinter launched halfway through the year and quickly became the 9th most popular program in 2018. So we continue that pursuit of new ideas. They come mostly from you. We have a rigorous process to put it through, but in 2019 we launched scent detection, and the feedback's been very, very positive. I was quite surprised at our recognition of therapy dog titles. We were expecting 5 to 10 organizations to step up to the plate. I think we have 12 now or something, so we've exceeded our expectations. And so I think, are there members of that committee in the audience, or maybe not? The next couple slides is a transition into some of our communication strategies. They've evolved significantly throughout the year as well. Not only what we're pursuing, but again, this tracking. One element of our communication strategies is to serve you, the member, particularly understanding that many of you are breeders. These are examples of some of our communication efforts that have resulted in increases in referrals to you, handing off the general public interested in puppies, knowing that you are responsible in your assessment of the appropriate puppy purchaser. So we've had some success in those handoffs to you through our website and our puppy list. The next item I want to talk on briefly is a change in resources, or a realignment in resources that we've made in 2018 to better represent the CKC in issues of advocacy. Legislation, attitudes, perceptions of the purebred dog industry. And we've dedicated resources in partnership with you, the subject matter experts, and the people to back up the message. We've created task groups. We've made phone calls. We've had meetings with people of influence in government and other areas. And that's a lot of work. But one thing that is the foundation of our strategies are these sort of this framework, or these elements when we go to the table and speak with these people. CKC wants to project itself as an organization that recognizes opportunity, is prepared to collaborate, promotes communication, and can offer its expertise and consultation with these really tough issues. Mr. Truss is here from Agriculture Canada. We had a healthy debate yesterday when he raised the issue of the need for due clause. And through that conversation, we recognize there are circumstances where it's imperative to remove due clause, but our world has evolved to different circumstances where it's not. And these elements are what opens the dialogue, and it lets us have a healthy conversation to get to a suitable solution instead of something more drastic. The other thing we say to our people, and you know this, the people we meet with, and you know this just as well as us, is this foundation, what you represent as a member of the CKC is your commitment to our code of practice as member breeders, the code of ethics, and it's all supported officially by the bylaws, policies, and procedures, the bylaws of which Mr. Truss oversees on our behalf. So To say all of that, I offer some evidence of what we're doing practically. And here's just a list of the things that we were engaged with over the course of 2018. Some of our staff have met with these organizations, and our honorary vet will see some of the, I think, some of the types of associations he was recommending that we deal with as well. We often come to the table with these organizations and say, there are subjects we're not going to agree on, but there are, and believe it or not, with some of these associations, common purposes and objectives, and we become stronger together. And using that framework and the power that we have as the Canadian Kennel Club, my opinion is when we make the phone calls now, they pick up the phone and they listen to us. So while we're not always successful, and we have had some movement on some of these issues, at least we're starting with our voice being heard. So, my last slide on this subject is back home in the office, some of our strategies to support this goal are evidenced in the types of things we track. These are examples of mention of the CKC that we weren't necessarily aware of or we proactively asked for. And you may not be able to see, but there's an example from Global News, Abbotsford in BC, and even an article from an organization in the US talking about us. And that circle is some intelligence that we've hired to help us analyze it. And we were quite pleased to see that about 3% of that media exposure is negative. And we were quite surprised because we know ourselves, and we know we are very tough on ourselves, and through social media we criticize ourselves a lot. But in the bigger picture, when millions of media reaches and exposures of CKC, we do pretty good. 50% is positive, but we take the challenge that 47 is neutral, and we need to move that to positive. So I'm going to stop there and move a little bit to one final subject, and then Mr. Truss is going to join me at the podium. And as my segue into Mr. Truss, the other big thing that happened in 2018 and continues into 2019 is our pursuit to have our two pending referendums approved. One compelling reason is that we are anxious to get some breeds recognized. But through that process and the dialogue back and forth with Agriculture Canada, we've come to learn a lot more about our position in the Animal Pedigree Act, why it exists, why it's positive for us, and where we can do better, frankly. And Agriculture Canada has helped us to distill it into themes that will be incorporated into our future communications with you, because we feel we're doing very well in a lot of these things, but you can always pursue improvement. And those themes are here, and we've been having very healthy discussions. Mr. Truss spent several hours with the board yesterday so we could better understand and have an exchange of information. So I'll ask Mr. Truss to come up and offer some words in that regard. And as I do, because I don't want to forget, I started this presentation by saying that we are financially stable. I would like to recognize that we have a wonderful opportunity right now to have the past chair of the Audit Committee, Murray Bottrell, who is from Winnipeg, at the same time as he has handed off the baton to Tanya Hatton, who is our current chair of the Audit Committee. So thank you while you're here and on behalf of the membership.
Hello, thank you very much, Lance. I guess I want to start by saying, Lance, it's been a pleasure dealing with you and Joan and the board in the last little while. Some of the issues that I raise are necessary as me, as administrator of the Animal Pedigree Act on behalf of the Minister of Agriculture. And you don't see many people from Agriculture Canada here, do you? Matter of fact, quite frankly, I am not out very often. Besides the Act, I have a number of other duties, but there are 69 official associations under the Act. Maybe about 50 that are fully operational. Some are struggling, that's for sure. However, as you can imagine with that number, it's impossible for me to get out and speak to everybody. So it is a luxury, in a sense, to be able to speak with you. And I think, as Lance said, we did have a good meeting with the board yesterday. So having some of that dialogue is always helpful. So what I'm going to do, by the way, even yesterday, Lance had to remind me I forgot a slide because this is still in practice mode. So we'll see how we do here. So Lance, if I skip something or something, please feel free to interrupt and add in. Okay, so first of all, I don't want, you're familiar with legislation like criminal code, okay? Health of animals regulations, the Income Tax Act, all wonderful things, right? And it's always about rules, isn't it? It's about things you shouldn't do. I don't want to talk about rules here. I want to talk about the purposes of the Act. What underlies this? There's something when you refer to statutory interpretation. It's parliamentary intent. All of your parliamentarians and the people who work for them are not necessarily the best drafters of legislation. Okay? So you'll see amendments coming over time, and they can't put everything into a piece of legislation that sets out all the rules and how you must operate. So this is why even when things go to court, one of the things courts will look at, what was the intent of the legislation? So this is what I'm going to start off with. I'm going to start by talking about a few things relating to the intent of the Animal Pedigree Act, former Livestock Pedigree Act, and had another name before that, even longer. The first is to promote breed improvement. And I'm taking this out of the purposes of the Act, and I'm just extracting a few words that are relevant here, and you'll see them later. Breed improvement doesn't refer to necessarily just the breed. It's in the broad sense of breed improvement or genetic improvement. Protect persons who raise and purchase animals. And registering animals that have significant value. And you'll see that term coming up again. You may find it a bit strange, something in legislation says have significant value, right? Usually there's a purpose behind a legislation, but in this case, that term significant value is left for determination in part by the industry, but it's not something without meaning here. Everything in an act has meaning. It's there for a purpose. Glad Lance can do this because I'll probably get the wrong. I think yesterday I made something go wrong. So, okay, the next part that helps understand some of the expectations is when you're incorporating breed associations. First thing, animals of each breed have significant value. There's that significant value again. Okay. So significant value. In this case, when incorporating breed associations or adding new breeds, is now something I'm always asking the applicants. So what is the value or use for the breed? Now, I mentioned to the board yesterday, it's always easy to talk about different species, right? Some other organizations, so I'll talk about the sheep people. They took a bit of beating yesterday from me. They already had, this was quite some number of years ago. I think they had 34 breeds they were all recognized for. And some of the breeds were doing well, and some have sunk into oblivion almost. And they weren't really paying attention to those breeds. And the use in the industry was changing a little bit. They came to me with a list of 7 new breeds. 3, I think, which they didn't even have them in Canada. There were no breeder proponents for some of them. And for all of those breeds, they had not even defined the purpose or value of the breeds. How would they be used in the sheep industry? How they would be used for production purposes at all? They just wanted new breeds. I remember them going to the minister saying, that David Truss, he won't let us get these new breeds. So I was the nasty one, and I continue to be nasty. But I also have in one of my filing cabinets about that many organizations that have failed over time. That's not counting the breeds that are still on the books. They're not even going. Often at the outset, there's great enthusiasm from a few people to go forward with a breed. But enthusiasm only takes you so far. And a lot of the breeds that have failed were not the fault of the animals. It was for the lack of continuance on behalf of the breeders and growing enthusiasm, let's say, that makes sense for the industry. So whoever's going to be using them, wherever they're going to go out, it has to make sense. Otherwise, you don't do well by the breeders, the breed, or the individual dogs. So all of them should have a plan for continuance into the long term. So significant value is in a broader sense than just how is it particularly used. Keeping of pedigrees and other records would be beneficial to the breeders and the public at large. Here's something else that you probably never thought of. Why would legislation say something about the public at large? Okay, here's a little hint. The people who approve this in Parliament, they're members of Parliament. And guess who they respond to? The public at large. The main thing that they hear from, or people who hear from, are people who don't like something. Well, I think the board knows that too, right? You don't hear from all the people that said, you're doing a great job. You hear from people who have a complaint about something. And the same thing goes with all of our breed associations. They feel the same thing, and the same thing when it comes to dogs and dog breeders. So the public at large has to be part of the broader concept of when you're looking at significant value, when you're looking at how the animals will be used, their purpose and uses in society in general. And obviously, the one that's really critical is representing the breeders throughout Canada. I know this is called the Canadian Kennel Club. Most of our associations are not called a club, they're called an association, but that name was there for a long time, and it's, I think, internationally referred to as a club often as well. But a club usually evokes the concept of a tight little group of like-minded people. The one thing that is like-minded, though, should be for all breeders. Whether you like them or not, as long as they meet certain criteria, you do or should be representing the breeders throughout Canada. So even the breed associations, you have your membership. In some cases, you may have some breeders that are not members. And I certainly make sure that all breed associations understand they should have, let's say, non-member fees. You can have different fees for them. But as long as they do certain things, you still have an obligation to them. So for registration and transfer of animals in particular. Okay, so now we've gone through some of the words in the Act. Now let's see what this gives rise to. The benefits, first of all, authorization of breed associations. So under the Act, a breed association is given particular authorities under the Act for a different breed, or multiple breeds in this case. Keeping of pedigrees. Nobody else is allowed to keep pedigrees other than the breeders themselves. Okay, that's private breeding records. So no other organization, once you are authorized for a breed, is allowed to keep pedigrees for other commercial purposes and so on. Breed standards. That is an underlying basis for a breed association to operate. Now, I've put in here, because the breed standards and rules of eligibility in the CKC haven't been the same thing. Nevertheless, I would like to encourage a tighter relationship of the two. We had some discussion yesterday. Certification of the animals. Now, here is where the real value added comes from the breed association. The certification is not just a piece of paper, and it could be electronic as well. Certification says it's the value added portion of what the association does to verify the information. So the pedigree, the lineage of the animals, that they conform to certain requirements for the breed. Mentioned to the board yesterday, I think pretty much everybody, unless some are technically challenged, probably have a way to print out what otherwise could look like a very official looking paper. So most of you here can do that, right? We have great printers and all kinds of software to do that. Nobody needs the CKC for a fancy paper. What you do need the CKC for, same with other breed associations, is the value that goes behind that certification, what it means in terms of the breeding programs, in terms of the credibility of the breeders and the lineage and the correctness of it. So sometimes there has to be some dealing with members and breeders and sometimes buyers that can be a little testy at times. But it's all part of the process, too, of making sure the information is correct and reliable and is a value-added component of what you do. So, and transfer registrations is, we have, at Agriculture Canada, traceability is a very big thing now, especially when you have disease issues, you know, mad cow disease, and all of a sudden traceability became very important, because we don't want to shut down the entire industry for a health purpose in one part of the country that's not relevant to others. So guess what they did when they first tried to track animals that may have come from England, where BSC was known to have started? It was the registries that they went to. So there's something a little bit outside the norm, but traceability itself has many purposes. You're using it for pedigree information, but there are other values that derive from it as well. And that means the transfer of animals to another person, to another breeder. So making that linkage has multiple benefits. And then, if I summarize, the benefits accrue to individual animals and the breed population itself. That's what registrations, the benefit should, it should have a benefit for both of those. Not just one, not just we call the breed population, but it should be beneficial for the individual animals. And I'm talking about in part to the well-being of the animals overall. And your honorary chair, Dr. Rivnusen, I think he covered some of the stuff I'm going to cover here, so we didn't get together beforehand, but they did an excellent job. Breeders, collectively for the breed population, benefits should be for you, the breeders, because having information about all those breeders as a group, nobody can breed a breed on their own, right? There are some people who think they can at times. I know in the livestock industry they don't want to bring in other genetics because I have the best, and I know it doesn't work that way. You absolutely have to have exchange of genetics, and we have to keep the, I mean, in the plant side, it's a little bit different. There's more capability to tightly control the genetics. In the animal world, we can't. And the constant change in every breeding results some additional mutations that may happen. Some can be beneficial at times, some can be not beneficial. But that is the lifeblood of a breed, of a population. You have to exchange genetics. Buyers and the public at large are expected to benefit, and Canadian society. And I put on this part for the market and the intended usage of the animals. Okay. So now, let me talk about farmed animals. And again, I think people had the idea that the Animal Pedigree Act earlier was called the Livestock Pedigree Act, and dogs weren't necessarily considered. However, at the time when dogs were recognized, or the CKC was recognized under the Act, dogs had a different purpose than the majority of purposes now that animals meet. Dogs still had jobs in terms of taking care of rodents on the farms or rural properties, herding purposes, guardian purposes. It wasn't just for recreation, just for companionship, although that may have formed some part of it. So the role of dogs has changed tremendously over the years. But nevertheless, at that time, dogs were a little bit closer to the farmed animals. So I want to talk about the farmed animal side because of the 69 associations, the vast majority are farmed animals. Meeting market needs. For farmed animals, we're looking very much at breeding and productivity. And productivity of the animals in this sense can be for a whole bunch of things, and this is where I missed one of the bullets when I was doing the presentation, so I'll read it to you now just to give you an idea. Meat, obvious, right? Dairy purposes, draft. We have a number of horse breeds and occasionally others, like llama, that are used for draft purposes. And that could be hauling, and there's some unique uses, and also for carting. Land clearing, this is where I referred to goats. There have been a couple of neat cases in which, especially where sensitive territory, where you didn't want large tractors on or was sensitive, so they used goats to help clear the land. And you know the goats eat everything, right? What's almost true, sometimes to the detriment of the animal itself. But in this case, they are actually great harvesters. And so it's, you know, there are very unique things that animals are used for at times. Fiber has always been an important one. Sheep, goats, and llama and alpaca are fiber type animals, and not all of them are used for fiber. But then there's recreation purposes, competition, herding, petting zoos. So there's a wide variety of purposes. And the reason I mention this is going back to the significant value and the purpose of the animal, though, too, of the breed, is important to take into account when those are part of your objectives, because you want them to do well for the purposes they're going to have. Ensuring animals are functionally fit for the production environment. It's obvious on a farm. You run into a wide variety of environments. And I can tell you, as an example, beef cattle are often spend most of the year outside. And also, they have a diet, and with a rumen, sometimes some are more adaptive to certain things than others. It has often been the case that breeders in Western Canada and Eastern Canada don't necessarily prefer to have the genetics from Eastern or Western Canada if they're not there. The reason is those animals may be more adaptive. So the lines of animals in Eastern Canada may be more adaptive, for example, to corn in the diet. Whereas in Western Canada, not nearly as much, not very much corn in Western Canada, and some of the other grains may be used as supplement for diet, for energy purposes. So those are part of the things that have to be taken into account for the well-being of the animals now, as well. They have to be functionally fit for the production environment. Now, the next thing is fitness. Now, from a genetic standpoint, when you're talking about fitness of a population, there are three things that really fit into that. Reproductive fitness, health of the animal, and what I refer to as overall survivability. But fitness refers to the ability of a population to pass its genetics on to the next generation. So for individual animals, an animal is not fit in the genetic sense if it cannot pass its genetics on because of health reasons, because of reproductive failures. So that doesn't mean you go to a vet and fix things for that animal because it seems like a wonderful animal and you perpetuate the genetics there that may continue to have those problems later on. That doesn't help the fitness of the animals or of that breed. Health and survivability are terms that are more general. You know what health is, but survivability can relate to its compatibility with the environment it is in. And that is just as important as the general health of the animal, because the reproductive events can occur within a short period. It's not so much with dogs because they're in a domestic environment more so. Quite often, the reproductive part happens in a very short period. It's a critical time frame. And if they are not surviving well and need a longer time to adapt, you may not get any results from them. And then sufficiently adaptive to changes. And this is different from, and this is where it depends on the usage of the animals and how they may have to go through multiple environments across the year. Okay, now this is a breeding pyramid. I just wanted to show this because it's kind of an idealized breeding pyramid. From the livestock point of view, what happens is we tend to have we have breeders who actually engage primarily in breeding to get the best genetic stock. They don't represent all of the breeding that goes on in the industry, or what I might refer to as the reproductive part of the industry. Breeding and reproduction are often confused and they're intermixed, the terms. But when we refer to elite breeding stock, this is referring to those breeders who may have several generations of animals that are maintained even in the family that go over time. They are busy selecting the animals which they expect to do the best to be the sires and dams for the next generation. So the best of the breeding stock goes back into the breeding population. Others will be sold down to the next level of the pyramid, the multipliers. They can go into the commercial side as well. The multipliers, they can be selling semen, embryos, individual animals, bred heifers, and so on. As well, the elite breeders are involved in the importing of genetics and exporting of genetics to maintain diversity worldwide within those populations and to continually access the best genetics available. So that's a little different from the other breeders who may be breeding in the multiplier section. Again, this is reproductive, and they are helping to further the bloodlines, shouldn't say bloodlines, disseminate the bloodlines out to the broader population that is using the animals. And then finally we have commercial applications, or say general public, we'll call it that way, but in the livestock industry it's not general public that have these animals are going to meat that are used for milking and all the other purposes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I already had the slide on breeding for farmed animals, breeding objectives for farmed animals. Here's one for dogs. Basically the same bullets, but the application is a little bit different. So when you're breeding domestic dogs, you want to meet market needs, and that includes, first of all, breeding, which I put separately from, just as with the pyramid, separately from the actual intended use. Now, it's not to say breeders don't use their dogs too, obviously, but I wanted to separate. So you have companion animals, hunting, service dogs, therapy animals, family pets, competitive recreation, herding, and others. When you are breeding, you should be making an attempt to also pay attention to what the intended use of those animals are. What here we call market needs. I know you don't like to say that with dogs, right? You don't say we market our dogs. But it's taken from that standpoint and compared to the livestock side, it makes sense, right? You have to breed towards what the animals are going to be used for and where they're going to be. Ensure that the animals are functionally fit for the environment and their usage. Besides the Animal Pedigree Act, one of my other roles is I do coordinate animal welfare issues for Agriculture Canada. And this coming week, I will be having meetings with the European Union under what's called the Regulatory Cooperation Forum under the CETA agreement. And I can tell you, the EU's attention to animal welfare is very, very high. And I'm a little bit nervous about this because we know that their interpretation of things can be a little different from ours. Nevertheless, we are seeing across the board for every species more angst, I'm going to call it that, about animal welfare issues. People see something in social media that gets traded around on the internet and by word of mouth, and all of a sudden people are jumping on it, and everybody is, there are many, many companies these days, and I refer to the retail sector in particular, are being extremely cautious about their branding, because you may build up a brand and it'll come out as very, very positive until that one hit. And some people will attach every bit of negativity to one event that may occur. And that they attach to animal welfare. There's an emotional attachment to animals, and you know very well, dogs even more so than other animals, that all the other things we deal with at Agriculture Canada, nobody cares about a seed, okay? Grains, you know, they don't look back at you. They're not cute and cuddly, that's for sure. But anything that's cute and cuddly and looks back at you is fair game for a passion that is hard to address from a government standpoint. So we are dealing with a lot in the area of public trust, and animal welfare is one of the top of that list, dealing with how we're going to address the concerns of the public overall. So the CKC fits into that, and all of you dog breeders fit into that. And that means that the breeding is starting to get more attention, including for livestock animals. People will criticize some of our livestock breeds for saying, well, listen, those animals can barely even stand up. You've probably heard about some horses on the racetracks breaking legs. Yes, they are great runners, but you know, they're starting to break down, right? There are other cases, and we have on the dairy cattle side, feet and legs, because they have increased production. Now, Canada's been doing fairly well. There's a group called the Canadian Dairy Network that has some 28 different traits that it analyzes, and assessment of things like feet and legs, part of the overall fitness of the animals is being assessed. But nevertheless, there continues to be a lot of pressure based on the use of the animals that sometimes is little incompatible with the welfare of the animals. So, warning. Welfare issues are not going down in terms of attention of the public, they're going up. And we may see some things that you're not going to like and are really surprised at. Believe me, in the livestock side, we're way ahead of that. We've seen a lot of stuff and overall ongoing criticism, and I handle an awful lot of letters to the minister, Mr. Minister or Ms. Minister now. It is terrible what breeders are doing to the animals out there. I'm hoping we don't get too many from the dog side, but we have had an awful lot over the years from the livestock side. And you're going to have a speaker later, Jackie Wentbrook. Worked with her through the National Farm and Care Council. And when we started NFAC in 2005, I had a difficult time within the department even getting resources for the organization and making the case why this is important. Now the whole livestock industry says we couldn't do it without it. So Jackie's do a good job of the presentation. She's been great to work with. Sufficiently adaptive to changes. Oh, okay, we're on to the next one, right? Yes. Oh, wait, oh, sorry, no, okay, thanks, Lance. I was thinking I was on the livestock side. Okay, so now, ensuring animals are functionally fit for the environment, fitness of the animals, we went through that. It's the same thing as livestock here in terms of fitness. And then sufficiently adaptive to changes in the environment. Now, this is a little bit different for dogs. I mentioned the fact that the use of dogs have changed over time, right? Now, it doesn't mean the origin of the animals have changed over time, but your attention to how the animals will be used, what is the intended purpose, and the kind of environments that will be out there is, there are two things to look at. What you actually are breeding them for and want them to be for, and what they end up being used for, which you don't necessarily have so much control of. In all cases, however, the breeders and the breeding community should be a part of that. And I think, you know, it was already made in terms of how the breeders can play a role in making sure they're selling to people that understand those animals and understand how they should be used and what their purpose is, and not put them into incompatible environments. Okay, so now the bad stuff. Okay? And I have to thank my wife. She's a dog trainer, and she has come home with a few horror stories over the years, and sometimes we have a laugh at them just because are you serious? People really do that? So the first thing, and I think previous speaker did mention a couple of these things. One, is the dog or the breeder just wrong for the owner? It's not the dog's fault. It's just incompatible for that particular owner. How many times has my wife had somebody come into the school, and some lady who's having difficulty walking and is advanced age, and my kid's got me this puppy, and I just can't control it, and I don't know what I should do. You said, I mean, and this may be a big dog, it may be a very active type of breed, and the kids thought it was a great idea for their mother because they just lost her husband and need companionship, right? Well, that's not going to be good for the dog, and certainly not good for the owner. And there's a lot of that out there, and many of these end up in the pound with Humane Society. And it's really unfortunate. And hopefully it's not breeders, good breeders, selling to them. There are others outside the CKC and outside of your control, but I think it's a message that has to keep going out. And Lance, myself, are on a group. It's called National Companion Animal Coalition. And I think we continue look at ways that we may be able to help address that. Again, this is going back to what you've already seen. The dog or the breed is functionally or biologically unfit, and there's enough of that out there. Incompatible for the intended use. You've heard enough about that already. Extremes versus balance. And I think this is one of the sad things where there are pressures on populations. And as I pointed out to the board, all of the breeds that the CKC has recognized, when they were recognized, I'm quite sure they were not bad populations, rife with all kinds of genetic disorders, right? Now you have that in a lot of the breeds that wasn't there before. Breeding practices, that's not just about once genetic disorders become apparent in a population, those may have arisen because of certain types of breeding. Close breeding of animals, not ensuring there's sufficient genetic diversity, and losing important genetic diversity within a breed. We have some breeds down to the very last animals that can even be called members of the breed doing very poorly genetically. And you have to have options to address that problem. And there are ways to do that by breeding outside and resurrecting a breed. But extremes, breeding for extremes has been one of the things that has pushed some of the breeds, unfortunately. And there are certain traits, for example, skeletal growth has a fairly high heritability. Within a few generations, you can change the size quite a bit. And size including proportions in the body, which may not be helpful for the well-being of the animals. Perfection. The idea of perfect should start with the whole animal. Genetics is about the whole animal, and anybody that's focusing on a single trait is not doing well by the animal and the population. So genetic diversity and survival of the breed population is important. And the last point I make here is what can go wrong in dog breeding? And you as an organization have a large role here in Canada. But you know very well that there are some things that have happened in terms of different types of breeds or claims to be breeds that have come up. The CKC has not been in that market. It has not been available to address what the desire was from those that wanted different types of animals. Now, it's not just about saying, here are the variety of animals, breeds that are available, but making known how different breeds may be compatible in certain environments for certain uses, and it desires of the public if they want, and desires for various purposes. Designer breeds are kind of a negative term, aren't they? For several reasons. One, there is not good known genetics behind them. Fairly indiscriminate breeding without attention to the well-being of the animals. Genetics that's put together with maybe one or two ideas in mind, but in the end, my wife refers to brain-dead dogs, okay? There are a few out there that he says they're just a disaster. You cannot work with them. But there are other things that are a real problem in some of those. This is where an extension of the CKC's role in terms of registration could be mobilized in terms of looking at how the CKC can play a different role and reaching a broader part of the population to may I say, marginalize those designer dog breeders. Because you can have crosses of two animals and it's very legitimate. And you saw that breeding pyramid. Crosses of breeds are an important part in the beef industry, important part in the swine industry. Canada is, I think, the third or fourth largest exporter of pork in the world. Canada, a relatively small country in terms of people. We're the third or fourth largest exporter in the world. And it's built on a three-breed cross, largely. It's not the purebred animals that go out. Because when you come to performance, the crosses have certain benefits too, healthy as well. So I would leave that as a little bit of a challenge to the CKC to see how you can address some of those markets that you're not in, and there may be an opportunity. Is there? Oh, there we. That's the last one. I forgot yesterday. Lance had to remind me. Okay, so overall, I get the question a lot from breed associations and different species, and saying, you know what? We can't convince people to register their animals. Can you help us out? Like, what should we say to them? So, no, I can't write everybody's because, you know, all the different markets out there, I'm not going to write everybody's stuff for them in terms of why you should register animals. But here are a few clues. Registration, first of all, should provide assurance of a quality background for the animals that you are registering and then purchasing, and a predictable genetic background. The reason for registration is really about the predictability. So you have a fully known commodity on one side of the pedigree from the sire and the dam. So when you breed those two, it is predictable what you're going to get. And the concept of purebred doesn't mean pure in the same sense as that we have no contamination in there. Genetics doesn't work that way in terms of contamination. We're all contaminated. Do you know how many genetic defects we have in our human body? Lots. And I'm not talking about behavior either. But we all have a lot of defects. And depending on the type of mating that goes on, some of those genetic disorders may come to light. So this is where attention to the genetic background of animals is important, to good breeding practices is important. Assurance and responsibility of the breed association, again, I referred to the fact that anybody can print out a certificate. but there's a lot that goes behind registration that refers to not only the rules of eligibility, what is required setting out, but certain other things to make sure there are no errors, conforms to aspects of the breed requirements. And there's a lot that breed associations add in to that paper that's not evident from the paper. It's not about the paper itself, it's about the background. And finally, if you are doing a good job as breeders and the association's doing a good job paying attention to what the market needs are, animals should be very well suited to the endpoint, that being the buyers out there, and all the people are going to be using it for the many, many different purposes. Many people are not interested in being breeders themselves. There are a lot of accidental breeders out there, but that's a different matter. But having this available, all this information and the value put into it by the breed association is really important to serve the broader community out there. Anyway, there's a lot more similar between livestock and dogs. I know you don't milk your dogs, you don't sell them for meat, you don't shear them for fiber, but you have purposes as well. And I would encourage the CKC to continue on the very good job it has been doing. And Lance, I will mention that over the last year in particular, when we had a meeting with you and a few others from the board, I think since that time we've been very pleased with the progress that the CKC has been making, addressing some of the issues in genetics, as well as welfare, and I'm going to continue to make sure that you understand it's very important out there. And maybe the last point I will say, these things have visibility from senior management in our department. And 2 weeks ago, when the Assistant Deputy Minister dropped by my office and he said, so David, what's happening with the dogs? I don't get that for other species. Okay, I really don't. But there is attention being paid to this. So I'm counting on you to do a good job. Okay.
I'd like to say thank you for your patience on holding your questions to the end. I think we're doing quite well for time, so there should be a healthy chunk of time to ask questions to the various speakers. I had just two more items that I wanted to cover before I hand it back to Joan, and one is an update on this IT project you've been hearing about for quite some time now. And I think I am starting with the video to offer you an overview, and then Andrew McAllister, our e-business manager, is going to come up and give you a little bit more detail with the actual schedule. But I'm going to...
A few years ago, the CKC committed to a project called IT for You to replace its outdated IT system with modern technology and simpler processes. How does this affect you? CKC members will visit ckc.ca and log into a brand new member portal, transforming how you get your CKC business done. Not only will IT for You simplify all your online transactions, including registration and other applications, it will also give you unprecedented access to information, including dog records, points, and so much more. Welcome to IT for You. Your personalized dashboard is where you'll begin. A dominant feature on your dashboard is your My Dogs listing. Use this list to easily view the specific details of all your dogs. Click on any of your dogs to view their profile page. A complete summary of all the dog's relevant details, many of which can be downloaded and shared. IT for You offers 24/7 access to your dog's vital registration data, links to their lineage information, applications and certificates, titles earned and current accumulated points. Also part of your dashboard are your applications, giving you access to the date of initiation and current status. Simply click to view anytime and stay on top of developments that require your input. Quick links are another valued feature on the dashboard. One click takes you to a new, simplified dog registration form. Another quick link transports you to a new membership renewal page. Here, it's literally 2 clicks and you're done. Early on in the project, CKC members like you provided their valuable input to the IT4U project team so they could create relevant online tools that put you in control. Take care of all your CKC business, track your dog's progress in shows and trials, and manage the important information that can help you achieve greater success. Enjoy significant improvements right from the start and anticipate additional exciting features to be added over the months following IT4U's launch. IT4U, essential information, simple to use, at your fingertips. Coming soon to ckc.ca. Read the bulletin, CKC's e-newsletter for IT4U updates.
Hi everyone, I hope the video excited you. I'm getting quite excited. It's going live in September, which is the end of a very long journey. Special thanks for the input of the IT4U steering committee, staff, and members. I don't know if some of you are aware, in an age where we trade in a phone every 2 years, what we're dealing with right now is a 37-year-old IT system. So it's definitely the time to replace it. So what I talk about a lot is, go live in September. And people often ask, what does go live mean and what do we actually get on day one? So the next couple slides I've broken into what you're actually going to get. So the first slide is what you're going to get in September. And then between now and September, we'll continually roll out new applications and features. So for the external rollout, on the application side, we've got the litter registration and all types of litter registration, including if it's artificial insemination, that type of thing. The Canadian-born dog application. TCN is a new type of dog registration specific for competition purposes. Being able to do a pedigree request. So in the dog application, you'll be able to sort of cross-sell and buy pedigree there, but there's also a standalone form. A new form for new and lapsed members. That's a high-volume application that's not automated yet, so that's good to come about. A whole new renewal of membership, so getting that stuff in the mail and all the reminders. You'll be able to log in. There's a little big renew button, or you get the email, click on it, pick what type you want, and it's done. So that's a lot quicker. That's a big manual process for us now. Also, the ability to upgrade your membership halfway through. Stud books, you'll be able to order online like you can now. The other note that I keep always forgetting, within the dog application, other applications, one of the big constraints we have right now is if you're doing it with a non-member, either you can't see your dogs, you can't do the application, that type of thing. So we're excited to say when you process the applications, if there's non-members, they'll be able to participate, they'll be able to consent where they need to consent. So that's a big one. Now we'll transition to what the actual portal has. So some of the features for phase 1 are you get a list of all your own dogs in one spot. You get a list of all the applications and their status. If an application is pending consent, it'll show that it's there. A list of the pending and completed orders, all in one spot again. The renew membership link. And within your profile, it'll have all your membership information, consecutive years, when you joined, everything like that. You'll also be able to update your communication preferences. So if you want electronic ballot versus paper ballot or the newsletters that we get, that's all in one spot. The ability to create and maintain the puppy list. So people that are quite involved in CKC, you kind of realize, depending on what you want to do as a member, there's actually 3 separate spots to log in. It gets kind of confusing. So this is all in one spot now. The other key thing we're excited about is the My Dogs. You have a list of all your dogs, but if you click on them, as sort of the video showed, you'll have a lot of in-depth information. So you've got your registration information, the contacts, the lost dog information, all the lineage. So when you get to that dog, you can click on the dam and siren, it takes you to that page. You can click on their siblings or litters that they've had all in one spot. All the contacts related from the dog from the beginning to where you are now. All the application related to that one dog is in the same spot. And all the, for phase 1, the titles that your dog has earned will be there as well. On the shows and trials thing, right now on the older website, you can get event results, but it's either on PDF or it's kind of convoluted. So there'll be a new area to see all the titles, all the event results. And then you'll still have access as a member to all the stuff you can right now. all the member benefits, things like the board agenda, everything all in one spot. And on the improved online help on the first phase, it's sort of an expanded knowledge base, kind of like an FAQ, but more. Now we transition into the different releases. They'll come out every 3 or 4 weeks. You'll get stuff that's new. So the first one is back to dog registration, AKC registered dog, where the breed is recognized by the AKC. Another competition one is ERN. We get into the transfer of the dogs. You can do that online. And then all the ones related to tattoo. In release 2, you get to amend the individual dog, CCN, dog-born US, where AKC doesn't recognize it, the foreign-born dog for non-resident, PEN and the power of attorney. And then on the portal side of things, before you saw the dog titles, but the next phase, you'll actually see the accumulation of points. So if you're not, let's say, a champion yet, it'll show you how many points you've got towards that championship. And then also the official and unofficial results. So right now, we have only the official one, but going forward, we'll show sort of the unofficial results as we get them in from the clubs. In release 3, you get amendment of a lease, amendment of a litter registration, a cancellation of non-breeding, all the different MCN registrations, and the registration of a lease. In release 4, a couple more applications, the amendment of a non-breeding cancellation and the deceased dog. And the release 5 has now more features for the portal. So in the My Dog enhancements, you're going to have the ability to right now upload the medical certificates for your own use, all in one spot. Improved online help. So on the public website, we have chat. We'll put that on the member website as well. And then the ability to submit a query to CKC, and it will track it. So you go to your queries, it'll say, yeah, CKC has responded or pending when you submit it. And on the application, we finish off all the different applications now. The amendment of a kennel, amendment of a pedigree, all the different duplicate certificates, and the ones related to the kennel name. So you see between now and December, there's a lot of things that are going on. It's a good firm basis. And then once we get into next year, then we get sort of another fun set of things like the electronic submission of event results, which is sort of key to get your results quicker than you do right now. So that's what you can expect between now and December. So hopefully you're happy and excited.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew is also available for questions for the remainder of the day. Before I hand it back to Joan, I wanted to take a moment. I forgot, I can't find. Where's Leela? Pardon? Okay. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge a very significant milestone for a very special person who we have with us today. Many of you know Leela Bahari. She's been with the organization and about to recognize and celebrate her 45th anniversary. And, okay, thank you. I've got just a few comments to say about Leela. And with a 45-year career, I think Leela is going to have a few comments. There's so many things that we could cover, and I'm going to focus on just a couple of them. But before I do, for those that know Leela, one of her special talents is this phenomenal memory for dates and times and places. And as an example, she probably could offer you some reminders of your careers at CKC as volunteers or members that you have perhaps forgotten. But when I thought of that, it's very valuable for us and for me when she reminds us of things and issues that come up, some of which we've talked to today, and she can say, back in da-da-da-da, when that happened before, this is what we did and this is what happened. So Leela, as you walk in the room, I was talking about your memory. I thought you would, after 45 years, you might find it curious that I was telling the story about what goes around comes around. It's interesting, 45 years ago, when you started, our Prime Minister was named Trudeau. Also, in the same year, the US had a president that they were looking to impeach. Richard Nixon. So what comes around goes around. But anyway, more seriously, the two things I wanted to talk about, Leela, today was both compassion and loyalty. And back then, the story as I understand it is Leela was a young lady, new to Canada, trying to establish herself. She was on a new adventure. And at that time, she had very little work experience, but certainly no experience working in Canada. So that was part of her tenacity and her perseverance. It was to find a job to establish herself. In the way I understand it, there was somebody at CKC that saw something in Leela, that ambition and that spirit, and took a chance. I think that's the right phrase. They took a chance on Leela and offered her a job. And back then, I think the title was data entry clerk or something along, data typist, clerk, typist. And she ran with it. She flourished from that start, and she's gone through progressive jobs at CKC, supervisory roles, management roles, and to Director of Registration and Membership Services today. And why I bring up that story is my interpretation is Leela has spent that 45 years giving back that compassion that was afforded to her when she first started. Whether you know or not, Leela has created a family at the office, just like you are very much a family as members of the club. CKC has this phenomenal attribute that we have average service time of our employees that no other company can dream of. I think when I started, it was something like the average employee has been there about 22 years. And I attribute you, Leela, to that to a great extent because of the compassion that you've applied throughout the years. She's going to make me cry now. So thank you for that. And the loyalty. 45 years is a long time. Leela's been through a lot. She's seen a lot. What you just saw from Andrew, Leela was there the first time we went to computers. So she tells the story where that required 12 hours, 20-hour days at times at Go Launch. And again, she's been using that experience to guide us. The other point I wanted to make under the theme of loyalty is the organization has been through a lot of ups and downs and turbulent times. And more than one occasion, Leela has stepped up reluctantly to take over either the CEO or the executive director's position because there wasn't one, or that was what led us to rocky waters. And she agreed to persevere and get us back into stable conditions. So that's a loyalty that's been consistent with Leela's contributions to the CKC over 45 years. So on behalf of the members in attendance, the members and the board of directors, the staff are going to have their say a little later in a few weeks. We'd like to thank Leela for her contributions and congratulate her on her 45th anniversary.
I think Lance have covered all that I wanted to say. I'm extremely honored this morning to celebrate this milestone with all of you here. Although it is 6 weeks earlier, just in July of 1974, I just graduated from Humber College. I came to Canada at the age of 19. All by myself. And it wasn't easy, but I made it through. I've, as Lance said, looking for a job, no Canadian experience, but when CKC advertised they were moving, and some of you are in this room may recall this, if I see some faces that I recall when CKC was on 2 Eva Road in Etobicoke, and we're moving to Bloor Street. I applied for a job because I was living in Toronto at the time. And I got the lady at the time that interviewed me, and she said, "Do you mind moving to that area?" And I said, "I live just on the subway line, so it'd be great for me." But I said to her, you know, I've gone to many interviews, and all they could ask for is Canadian experience. And if somebody doesn't hire me, I will never get that experience. So what happened is, I got home, and on the answering machine, there was a message from her and saying, "When can you start?" And so, 45 years later, I'm still here at CKC getting my Canadian experience. That summer was a very hot summer. I didn't have a car, just got a job, graduated, and what do you know? TTC went on strike. So luckily I was involved in a youth group at a Baptist church, and so I called up some of the elders and I told them, "This is my predicament. Can you help?" So they said, "Stay a couple hours later. When the traffic is off, I'll come and pick you up and I'll take you home." Well, that day, it was 2 hours from Bloor Street to Ossington and Bloor. So you can imagine, the traffic was still on. And she did it 3 days that week until TTC was able to get back on track. So, you know, throughout my career, there's a lot of story I can tell you. And I tell my colleagues at the office sometime when we're in meetings, I'll say, "Yeah, we've been there, done that, we're going through that." And so there's so much I could tell you, but I'm not going to bore you with my memories and stories throughout my career at the CKC. I worked very hard at CKC for many years and many long hours. Before we had VPN, before we had computers, where I could sit at my kitchen table now and work, or anywhere in the house, but before I stayed at the office till 1 or 2 in the morning, especially computerization time. It's a time when you'll do something, you go in the morning, and it disappears. So you got to try again. So there's those memories, as Lance make mention to. When I started there, it was walls and walls of what we called prime documents, and was copies of the registration certificate we were filed. And that's the way we would do our research manually. So what we've done over the years, we archived those in microfiche and microfilm. So some of you may recall those. And we still have those records. So we started computerization in the 60s. I wasn't there then, and that failed. So when we started computerization in the 80s, we make sure that it worked that time. And so with long hours and dedication and hard work from many, many of our members and volunteers, we were able to get our computer going. And let me see, December 10th, 1984, we had our computerization. And since then, we've been upgrading to get us where we are with our system that's called Apex system that we work with today. And I'll tell you, it's only holding by thread right now. So we can't wait for the new system to come in. We're looking forward to that. Throughout my tenure at the CKC, I have faced several challenges, but one of them has strengthened me to make me the person I am today. Making it to the milestone would not be possible without the inspiration that I have received from many former mentors over the years. Board members, bosses, friends, members, CKC members, and my colleagues, for whom I have the deepest respect and for whom I have derived the strength to challenge myself and perform better at each stage. I would like to thank my husband to put up with me for over 45 years, and late nights at the office and meetings on weekends, and attend a meeting like this on weekends away from home. But, you know, he was always good. He always supported me and always been there, and so is my children. And now I have a grandson who is the joy of our life right now. I'm honestly grateful for this recognition I have received from the Canadian Kennel Club. It's an honor. I would sincerely like to thank each one of you for helping me celebrate this 45 years. And I'm quite honored and thankful. Thank you.
Leila, it gives me a great deal of honor to be able to present this with you. I've enjoyed working with you for all the years that you've been here. Thank you so very much. Okay, as you came in, I believe you all received a copy of the annual reports for the committees and councils. If you have any questions, please direct them right to the appropriate board member, and they will be able to answer them for you. New business, we will open the floor to discuss various topics. When you come to the microphone, please state your name, probably spell it for Annette, and where you're from, and try and keep it to one topic at a time. One person doing multiple things gets confusing. The reminder that all issues that you bring forward today will be presented at the board meeting in September and discussed and probably referred to committees, councils, whatever. A further reminder that there can be no motions out of this today. These are just referrals, comments, questions. On that note, I turn it over.
This will be to Ag Canada. My first is just a comment. Comparing livestock to designer dogs are uncomparable. Designer dogs are just for monetary value for pet breeders. That's all it is. Now, my understanding of this, and maybe you can clarify after I finish here, is that Ag Canada is asking the CKC to consider recognizing and maybe registering mixed breeds. And if so, if that is the case, is the Minister of Agriculture also agreeable with this and aware of this?
It doesn't want to come out. No, I'm not recommending that, okay? The point, you want to do it?
Oh, there you go.
Something happened. Okay.
Just as good.
Thank you. No, the point was made that there was this market demand that wasn't being filled by the CKC. It got filled by what I may call indiscriminate breeders, designer dogs, because they found that an appeal in the general public and the population for things that now we know are not the great things to have out there, are they? I mean, there's not good for dogs, it's not good for the people in a lot of cases.
You're right.
That is a gap that the CKC wasn't filling. Are there options for the CKC? Yes. I am not recommending you do it, but I'm pointing out that there was a gap that was being filled, and it wasn't good for the dogs, and it wasn't good for other owners. There are several things that can be done. When you look at what the livestock industry has done, they have, yes, had purebred animals with the different breeds, but also crosses. And some of them are planned crosses that are used very beneficially to be very productive for meeting the market needs for which they're going.
But you're right, but that is livestock. We're talking about designer dogs here for monetary value only. Pet breeders.
I would say that's the way they have been done right now, okay? But if there were crosses of good quality purebred animals, design crosses just going one direction, not to come back into the breeding population, that would be another option to consider. Now, one thing I'd mentioned yesterday to the board, Lance, I referred to, some of these are registered by the livestock associations. However, what is the important part is the certification. So there's no certification going back to buyers of designer dogs right now. Okay? If you wanted to identify certain types of mixes of breeds and breedings that would be acceptable, and the CKC would be willing to stand behind that in terms of quality. Not, I mean, and saying, here's the genetic makeup of that, so you know what it is behind. This is not to come back into the breeding population at all. There's an opportunity on the certification side. It doesn't mean you have to register them, and they could be kept in a separate book. So that is a possibility where you can get, you know, the CKC can be in that market providing quality animals in a market otherwise just populated by indiscriminate breeders. So there's an opportunity. It's not a recommendation, and it wouldn't be a registration in the same sense as registering your purebred animals.
Yeah, but it's a validation. You're saying we're going to certify these Labradoodles, these Dachshund, pug crosses, etc. This is what I get out of that. So are you saying that I'm wrong or right?
The CKC would have the option of choosing which ones it thought might be worthwhile and would do well in the population.
What criteria would you have for that?
The CKC can determine. I mean, the market has been out there, okay? What you see are the Labradoodles, and I referred to some of the brain-dead animals out there and so on, never should have been done, okay? And they're appealing to a certain market. Now, a lot of that is misinformation, in my view, from what I've seen, what is going out there, and it is unfortunately fed in. And I can go around the block at home and talk to all the people, and I can tell you right now, about 3/4 of the animals fall into that category. The CKC is not in that space. You're the largest dog breeding organization in the world, in Canada, and yet you have done nothing to fill that space. So my challenge to you is, how can the CKC look at maybe filling that space and taking it away from those others that are not doing a service to the dogs or the other animals out there?
So the
people out there.
CKC that recognize purebred dogs should look at recognizing, certifying mixed breeds, and that's what you're saying, correct?
They wouldn't be breeds. If they're mixed, they're not breeds.
Well, Labradoodles
Okay.
or whatever you want to call
The
them.
certification process could. Now, I'm saying this is an opportunity you may want to consider. It is not a recommendation.
So beyond you is the Minister of Agriculture in agreement with this? And aware of it?
No, no. It doesn't work that way, because what I'm telling you is the CKC are incorporated to represent the breeders throughout Canada and the animals of these breeds that have been approved. Okay? It's up to you to do the job out there, and you address whatever the market requirements are. Now, this is not a registration in the sense of you're going to be perpetuating these animals into the future. It is to fill a market need and provide information to the market from what you're already doing, lending the credibility in terms of the background and planned crosses that may do well, and help address some of the problems out there with the other breeders that are not meeting standards that would be expected from the buying public.
Well, I think we'd be going in totally the wrong direction, and to say that we're going to recognize any of these crossbreeds, basically mongrels, like it's a step backwards.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the CKC and board and that can talk with the members. That would be appropriate. It is not a requirement. It is not a recommendation. I am pointing out that there's a big gap there between what the CKC is doing for a select breeder community in a sense, but the broad population out there that wants dogs and doesn't know any better is accessing animals from other sources that has not been good for the dogs or even the breeding community, because it misrepresents what good quality breeding is.
Maybe what we should be doing is educating the public then on purebred dogs.
There is a lot of room for education, for sure.
That's right, and that should be Ag Canada's focus.
No.
Not mixed breeds.
No. Agriculture
Support the
Canada
Canadian
does not
Kennel
have-
Club.
Yeah, Agriculture Canada does not have a role to educate the public on that.
No, but you're suggesting that we register these breeds?
No.
Really? A certification. To me, you're almost saying the same thing.
I will leave that to the board to discuss and work with the members in terms of what the options might be.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Just before, there's a lineup starting, but Dr. Reeve Newson would like to say something.
What we have to...
Just a half a second. Dr. Reeve Newson's going to make a comment.
What we have to remember is that all purebred breeds, as we recognize them as purebred breeds, originally started as crossbreeds. They took this, they took that, they took this, they came up with a breed, and we'll call it blah, 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 and after generations was recognized. So it's not as simple as saying A plus B equals C. We have to remember that. Like these, pardon me, Chusky Terriers, which were a cross, now are recognized as a purebred breed. So I don't think we should be foresighted about this. I mean, I agree with you, Tom. Our job is to preserve, as Dr. Bean would say, preserve and protect the purebred dogs as we see them. But even his speech was, they all started as mixes that generations ago. And that's what we have to protect.
Okay? Yep, thank you.
Hi, my name is Roberta Tucker. I'm the president of the Gordon Setter Club of Canada. And this question is, David, it's for you and for, also. This is about the rules of eligibility. We were one of the first breeds that had to go through the exercise of distilling our standard into 10 components. And it caused us certain amount of effort and time to consult and come up with these rules of eligibility. I guess the question is, we're still confused as to the usefulness of this. We're quite, happy and proud of our breed standard, and it aligns with other international standards for the breed. It describes how the breed is structured and to be created to be able to do its job in the field. So it's not strictly a cosmetic beauty pageant type of thing. It's a purposeful standard. So I'm still confused and still have trouble explaining to our members how these rules of eligibility are useful to us as breeders or to the public when we have a perfectly good standard.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, there. Yeah. No, you know what? I agree. And where's Thora? At the beginning of this, you should remember a couple of meetings trying to get across some of the basics. Under the Animal Pedigree Act, rules of eligibility are intended to be, let's say they're part of the standard. The idea that you have breed standards and rules of eligibility separate is not really desirable, in my view. But what had happened, the rules of eligibility that may be applied for registration were not written in the bylaws at all. The Animal Pedigree Act does require the rules of eligibility for registration, those being the decision points, what may or may not be registered should be in your bylaws. It should not be a surprise. The minister should not be receiving communication saying, I don't understand why my animal wasn't registered and they're refusing to register it. It should be written right in the bylaws. Okay, so that's the first point. The second one related to that is that, as I presented, I mean, a lot of the things relating to the breeds are functional characteristics, things that make sense and distinguish the breed. That's what the rules of eligibility are. They should be things that distinguish this breed from another breed. And they should be clear and set out clearly in the bylaws as well. And that's what the rules of eligibility are supposed to be. I think in some ways they may have gotten off a little bit. And I will be looking at some new ones and working with the CKC, the board and Lance, to make sure that they are conforming to the overall intent. But in the absence of them being clearly defined in the rules of in the bylaws as part of your authority to register or to refuse animals, they have to be clearly set out and relate to the characteristics of that breed and should be heritable. Okay? So those are the rules of eligibility.
Sean Bennett, Winnipeg, Manitoba, SHAWN. You're a popular guy today. Thank you for affording us the luxury, as you called it, of your presence today. There's a lot of grumbling. You can hear it behind you, I'm sure. There's a lot of things. You're saying just now, you just said, don't accept it under the ROE, but accept the doodles. The CKC's mission statement talks about purebred dogs. If Ag Canada wants a marketing company to go and market doodles, then go get one. That's not us. You're not going to get support in this room from that, I can assure you. Anybody in this room that supports marketing doodles, put up your hand. Not one. You've lost your way, sir. You've lost your way with CKC. It's not going to happen. So you may as well move on, maybe find another group that might work with you on that. We'd love to work with you on every other thing relative to purebred dogs, but I don't think that we're going to work with you on that. So you used words in your presentation, which I appreciated that. Value, representing breeders, lack of enthusiasm. There's not one person in here that lacked enthusiasm. There's lots of things that you talked about. Ag Canada wants us to help with animal welfare. Again, the people that you have in this room are passionate about animal welfare. We keep getting breeders, dog breeders, keep getting lumped in with backyard breeders, doodle breeders for profit. Anybody in here make any money last year breeding dogs? Not one. Anybody in here make money showing dogs? Not one. I think what's happened is that Ag Canada has lost their way with CKC. I don't think you understand fully what the CKC's mandate is about, their mission statement, and really what our passion is. It's certainly not doodles, and it certainly is animal welfare. So I agree with you on that. But I have one, so all those statements, I'm sorry to take so long. The one statement or question I do have is that we have been charged as a group, as a board, staff, to meet certain requirements that you have put forward over the last several years. To my knowledge, we've met all of those. The initial round of ROEs, which Lance will tell you, I was instrumental in helping getting a lot of those through because there was a lot of pushback. But what I'm asking you is that we've had referendums, we've had bylaw changes, and now we've got more ROEs. When is your office going to honor us with all of that work that we've put forward? When are you going to say, okay, here you go, here is the next registration, here is the next breed that you can bring into your group? When are we going to get action? We've done nothing but accommodate you. We've acted in good faith, but it's our opinion, again, it's our opinion, our perception, perception's our reality, that we're not getting that same communication and correspondence and cooperation back. So that's really it. When can we get our referendum items passed? When can we get our bylaw items passed? And when can we get some new breeds to register? Because there is a demand for those.
Okay, thank you. On that last point, I'm going to leave that largely to Lance and the board. I did communicate with the board yesterday, and the amendments to the bylaws are something that can be done fairly soon. The breed issues will take a little bit more time because a number of issues related to some communication we've had with the CKC in terms of meeting the requirements of the Act. So that will be addressed. Regarding the first issue that you raised, I wanted to point something out that I had neglected to do, and that the CKC has chosen to register only animals that are purebred. The Act allows for registration of animals that are purebred and percentage. So the option is there under the Act, and people may not realize that, okay? The previous Act, because when the first Act was put in place, there had been a concern in the early 1900s that came about mongrelization, and that was a very bad term, okay? And so that really affected all efforts to breed, and then you went ultra purebred. But, you know, as it was mentioned by your honorary veterinarian here, I think he did a very good job this morning too, and he just pointed out that many breeds, the majority of breeds, came from a mixed background. And that can be healthy for the animals as well. So the Animal Pedigree Act still relates to registration of animals and to track all of the genetic background. The opportunity is there for the CKC if it wishes to choose. If the members don't want that, that's fine. But the Animal Pedigree Act does not restrict you only to 100% purebred animals, and the minimum definition for purebred would be 7/8 related back to foundation stock of the breed. So that's effectively 3 generations of interstate breeding in order to do that. So just so you understand, the Animal Pedigree Act, and this is why even when we refer to the livestock breeds, there's quite a variation in terms of maintaining the purebred breeding populations, but also having other registered animals that meet market needs. That isn't, and in the case of the CKC, it is something to consider. It's not a recommendation, it's a consideration.
Okay, we don't like it. So have you read our mission statement? The CKC mission statement, have you read it? So then how do we go about allowing mixed breeds, as you call it? How do we go against our mission statement? You're already charging us as a department to stick to rules, and now you want us to break our fundamental mission statement. How can we do that? No, it's not him, sir, it's you.
I will let the CKC and the board consider what it wants its mission to be. Okay? You have certain requirements under the Act, but your mission, if you want to stick to only 100% purebred animals forever and ever, that's still up to you. But if you find that you have other things...
I think that is what we're going to do, sir.
Next person, please.
Grace McDonald, MC, capital D, Winnipeg, Manitoba. From the minutes of the last AGM, I believe, a lady named Barbara Heel raised, again, the same subject we're discussing, which we have been forever, commented that she would like to see the CKC focus on addressing the public perception that designer breeds are better. And the outcome of that is this was answered at the AGM. Well, we don't know what the answer was, so I don't know what became of it. It says, this item can be deemed closed. What did they do? What did CKC do? I mean, we don't know, so it doesn't help. But the bottom line is, I feel, and I'm sorry to say it, that on behalf of Ag Canada, you keep abdicating any and all responsibility to help with this issue. You keep throwing it back. The CKC should do this. The CKC should do that. The CKC should make this. Ag Canada takes no responsibility, and they haven't for the 50 years I've been a member. I've been hearing from people for 50 years that, oh, I paid only $250 for my Labrador Retriever because I didn't get the papers. They said if I wanted the papers, I would have to pay another $400. You know how many times I've heard that? I'll bet there's a few other people in the room that have heard that. At which point I will say it's like a fifth leg. It belongs to the dog, the papers. And it's against, as far as I know, the Livestock Pedigree Act to sell a dog purported to be a purebred and not provide the papers. Well, you know how many letters in 50 years I wrote Ag Canada about that? Because this is Ag Canada's responsibility. And you can't abdicate this one back to CKC. Why don't you do something about all these people who are selling dogs purported to be purebreds and saying they will charge more for the papers? I'm sure I'm not the only one who's contacted Ag Canada about this. So I just think Ag Canada is abdicating responsibility on both fronts, on puppy mills selling dogs without papers and undercutting we who spend a great deal of money producing purebred dogs, and on the issue of designer dogs. I just think we can't look to Ag Canada for any help. Thank you.
Jill Fraser, President of Manitoba Canine Association, Winnipeg, Manitoba. This is for Ag Canada also. Ag Canada regulates CKC's registrations. However, they want CKC to register or mediate registration for mixed breeds. We have to generate pedigrees. When we bring an import in, we have to have it certified. We have to go through all of these hoops. We have a venue of mixed breed registration where dogs, if they are altered, can compete in performance events. It doesn't lend validity because we give it no name. It is registered as a mixed breed dog, not a Labradoodle, not a Cockapoo. As the president of the club, I receive multiple calls a year asking how they can enter their registered Cockapoo in the confirmation end of the show and which group they should enter because they received a pedigree when they purchased the dog. Why can Ag Canada not control who is giving out certified pedigrees?
I guess I'm not quite sure how to answer it. First of all, there are offenses under the Act. If somebody is issuing a certificate of registration on an animal and they are not approved under the Act, that can be charged.
I have filed letters with copies of pedigrees for Cockapoos with Ag Canada, and nothing has been done.
This is the term registered is a protected term under the Act. The term purebred is a protected term, and the name of the CKC. So if they're doing
They're
it,
not registering with CKC. They're registering the dog with whatever parent club they come up with.
Yes, excuse me, if I could just finish. I'm telling you, those are the protected things under there's an offenses section of the Act, and we have an agreement with the RCMP for enforcement of that. The RCMP actually, though, in the last few years, has not been easily available to deal with that. And matter of fact, we even had from the Ontario region a statement coming that I was not aware of at all, that they decided on their top priorities, and that did not fit in there. I don't know where the status of that goes, but our department is not an enforcement department.
So Ag Canada has no teeth on any sort of registration of any sort of pedigrees, but yet they block CKC from registering new breeds.
No.
They make it incredibly difficult for us to register a new breed.
To be recognized for a new breed?
That's
well,
right.
there's a process to go through.
And I understand
But
that.
when it comes to enforcement, no, Agriculture Canada has no enforcement arm. We are not peace officers.
But when will Ag Canada step up and help clubs like Canadian Kennel Club support purebred dogs?
When it comes to enforcement, I have to go through our legal counsel to determine, and working with the RCMP, if there is a path forward. At this time, as I say, just a few months ago, I had some information that came back that I was surprised at myself, but it was actually the RCMP that asked us to put together a memorandum of understanding for how the act would be enforced. So right now, it's unfortunate, but although there are provisions still to do it, the actual engagement on enforcement has not been there.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Lloyd Simmons. I'm from Winnipeg. A couple of things I'd hate to see us close the door on. I don't think it's been used in the CKC, at least not to my knowledge, but it has been used by other kennel clubs. And the idea and exactly what David said, and in part what John had said, was that if you have a breed that's in trouble, and you have a group of breeders that go to the kennel club and say, we need to do something. We have this, bad left leg, or we have a genetic defect in our breed. We have to do something of bringing in new genetic material into our breed to maintain our breed. Now, what David had said is the 7/8, and that's the rule they used to use in the kennel club, that you did the outcross and you bred back into the breed for 3 generations, and then you had a group, either from the kennel club, certainly appointed from the kennel club, to go and look and say, okay, these meet the breed requirement, they can come back into the breed. But that's how you did it. The other thing that was said was that there are going to be fanciers there were fanciers in the past that took dogs of similar genetic makeup and basically made a breed and kept that breed going and was eventually registered by the kennel clubs. Most of those were based on function, whether it was ratting in a certain area or chasing deer uphill as opposed to chasing them on the flat plains. But that's how our breeds evolved. I would hate to see the kennel club close that door to us. As far as the designer breeds, maybe it's up to us as breeders in the kennel club to kind of show what kind of wonderful purebred dogs we have, as opposed to the cockapoos or the dogs that we have that are wonderful apartment dogs. Thank you.
I wanted to offer a couple comments and impressions. I'm going to really stick my neck out here. But was it Grace that made the first comment specifically about what was the outcome of that action from the previous annual AGM? It sounds like a non-answer, but part of what you asked, I try to address in my presentation. When I tell you about the strategies we're working on to address concepts that you have as issues, there wasn't a very more succinct answer when it was raised last year, and you'll get the same answer this year. I'm hoping you'll find comfort in the board's direction and the strategies that they develop versus a message that was given in one place or a campaign or a brochure that was created. It's more a message of we hear what you're saying and we're incorporating it in our activities, our business plans and budgets. And it's also a segue to, we're at a turning point right now where the board has one of its highest priorities is to re-establish its 3-year strategic plan. And I hate to sound like I'm defending anybody, but I hate conflict, so I'll make this comment. The glass is half full in that we're having a dialogue on very tough issues with Agriculture Canada. And it's very common that when you're starting that, it's very passionate and controversial and difficult. We have common ground to find. I'm encouraged that at least Mr. Truss is here having conversations with our board. And maybe I'll stop there.
Are there any other comments, questions, suggestions anybody would like to make? Oh, Ben.
It's good afternoon. It's just the afternoon. Ben Wasylishen, W-A-S-Y-L-Y-S-H-E-N-E, St. Paul, Manitoba. Welcome to everyone back to Manitoba. Honored guests, honored members. 2 points. a gentle suggestion for Mr. Novak and the chair and the board for this coming year. I'm speaking on point number 1 as a newer judge in Canada, which I am honored to serve. There are a great many, as you all know, a great many rules and regulations for us to abide by. And for those who are not in the Judges Forum, I can tell you that now, and we are under continuous scrutiny, which is a very good thing for the judges, new and established, and we hope that will continue with your guidance. Currently, when we review some decisions that have been made by ruling committees and the board, that people have lost their memberships and their licenses for reasons that are documented and just, that is because we all operate and should operate on the same set of rules. So in the coming years, we hope we can continue that dialogue, that those same sets of rules that are set out for judges continue, and that those individuals who have lost their memberships, I guess under CKC rules, are allowed to apply for memberships, and then would have to operate under the same sets of rules as the rest of us have over the years, to donate our time and contribute to the Judges Forum and the CKC as a whole. So it's a suggestion. Please do continue the dialogue with us. And let's work through these processes with our wonderful National Committee and other individuals who are monitoring everything we're doing. That was point number 1. Point number 2, I'm honored, and I thank you, CKC and board, for choosing my hound. For choosing my hound, our top winner, to grace your annual report. A dog from Manitoba, from Winnipeg. So I thank you all. Have a great day.
Are there any other comments, questions, concerns?
One thing. This is a challenge to the board. When Dick died, he left an intensive library and a huge collection of dog artifacts. And his dream was to have a library and a collection like this established at the CKC head office. So I'm just throwing that out to the board. I'd like you to consider it, and if it flies anywhere, please let me know. Thank you.
Everyone see us? Gayleen Robertson from Manitoba. It's Gaylene.
Darcy Nonachuk from Winnipeg.
So this is a suggestion. I am a member 33 years.
32.
32.
But we've been age discriminated.
So I was congratulated for achieving my 30 years when I renewed my membership, and then told that I didn't qualify.
We didn't qualify.
For life membership. And I was very sad. And I started as a junior.
Me
so
too.
with us being juniors when we started, and with us encouraging junior membership, I just want to know, what is the CKC hoping to obtain by then making juniors pay membership for 45 years or something like that, without letting them achieve that 30-year status and lifetime status? So it's a suggestion to change it back. Let us go. I want my pin.
When are you 50?
Oh, I'm not going to tell that. I was very close.
May I address? As I had mentioned earlier, our historian is very helpful in situations like this, and
I talked to her.
yeah, she made us aware that at that time of that change, it was one of those periods of financial crisis. So I think I can speak on behalf of Leela that you have our commitment to bring the issue to the next board meeting for consideration.
Old by then?
I don't know. September.
September. Thank you.
Now we come to a very interesting part of our meeting, and it's called local member recognition. And I thank you all for being here today to honor these people as we celebrate outstanding individuals from your local CKC membership. The opportunity to celebrate local members began about 3 years ago, and we have continued to honor this member tradition. We celebrate those for their contribution to CKC, the dog fancy, and the Canadian dog community. We owe our existence and continued success to the vision, hard work, and dedication of the members. You are the CKC. The year's award recipients are all excellent examples of this. I'd like to ask Gail Carroll to come up, please. Is this one working? Yeah.
Just don't get too close.
Okay. Gail is receiving the Lifetime Contribution Award. She's been a CKC member for 43 consecutive years, playing with dogs for much of her adult life. She has trained and handled a succession of Siberian Huskies, a Tibetan Terrier, and a Golden Retriever to a variety of Canadian American titles in Conformation, Obedience, and Rally. She has owned 2 history-making Siberians. One was the first Canadian Siberian breed champion to earn a utility title in obedience. The other, more recently, was a multi-Best in Show winner with several performance titles, who became the first Siberian to earn Canada's Grand Champion Excellent Award. That takes a lot of work, as some of you know. Gail has been judging obedience trials for 30 years and now also rally in both Canada and the U.S. She was the first elected president of the Canadian Association of Obedience Trial Judges. In 1996, she won the Purina-sponsored Obedience Judge of the Year award. She has written an obedience column as well as feature articles for Dogs in Canada. For many years, she has been Manitoba's representative on the CKC Obedience Council. A few years ago, she felt the need for a bridge between the novice and the advanced classes in Rally. She invented an intermediate class to fill that niche, which was recently incorporated into the American Kennel Club Rally program. Gail, we are pleased, very pleased, to present you with the Lifetime Contribution Award in recognition of your steadfast commitment and extraordinary contributions to the Canadian dog community and the Canadian Kennel Club through your roles as a CKC member, a judge, and as Manitoba's representative on the Obedience Council. Okay? Anytime you want. Could I ask Valerie Reese, Performance Award? Valerie Reith has been a member of the Canadian Kennel Club for 46 consecutive years and has been an obedience trainer for over 30 years. You don't want us to say these years? No. She has trained miniature Schnauzers, Dobermans, Labradors, Shelties, and Golden Retrievers to several obedience, rally, and tracking titles, including 4 obedience champions. She was a rally judge, the Rally Obedience Rep for Manitoba, and the Executive Treasurer of the Canadian Association of Obedience Trial Judges. She currently owns 4 Golden Retrievers who have appeared in movies, Ooh. Oh, a store. And commercials, and are certified pet therapy dogs, making people's lives just that little bit better. And we all know a lot of people do need therapy dogs to help them. It's a great job. Valerie, in recognition of your enduring dedication and exemplary contribution to the Canadian Kennel Club and the Purebred Dog Fancy, we are pleased to present you with the Performance Award. Thank you. Across the hall at the council room, they'll do an interview. Oh, yes, we do. Okay, we now go to Jody Ripstein. For the past 4, would you come up here, please? Sorry I'm reading this, but these people are not my area, and I don't know you. Thank you. For the past 4 years, Jody Ripstein has been a mentor in the Canadian, 4 decades, sorry. Well, that's the first part. I didn't realize she probably would. Canadian Dog Fancy. She's a founding member and treasurer of the Manitoba Sporting Dog Association, the vice president of the Assiniboine Kennel Club, and president of the Heart of the Continent Kennel Club. In addition, she is a lifetime member of the CKC and the American Spaniel Club. Jody is passionate about all aspects of the sport of purebred dogs and has dedicated her time to help many newcomers, sharing her knowledge with those willing to learn. She has volunteered with the junior program in Manitoba, including hosting the CKC Junior Handling National Championships in Winnipeg in 2005. In recognition of your impact and influence as a leader in the many areas related to purebred dogs, including your dedication to the junior handling program, we are pleased to present you with a mentorship award on behalf of the Canadian Kennel Club. Okay, where am I? Could I ask Lloyd Simmons to come up, please? Thank you. Lloyd Simmons acquired his first Irish Wolfhound in 1974 while he was still in university. Soon after, he joined the North Winds Dog Club, spending his time learning about the breed and participating in shows, lure coursing, and open field hunting. Lloyd's first litter whelped in 1984, one of which went on to win Best Opposite Sex at the 1988 Irish Wolfhound Club of America's National Specialty. Since, Lloyd has dedicated his time breeding both Scottish Deerhounds and Irish Wolfhounds, many of which have competed in specialty shows in Canada and the U.S. Just last month, he was awarded the coveted Best of Breed title of the Irish Wolfhound Club of America National Specialty. This was done with his Bred by Exhibitor Special. In addition to this huge accomplishment, he's also awarded Winner's Dog from the Bred by class. Lloyd's skills and expertise are made infinitely more valuable by his commitment to sharing his knowledge, advice, and encouragement to the next generation of dog fanciers. We are pleased to present you with the Breeder of the Year Award in recognition of your exceptional contribution to the purebred dog fancy. Through your exemplary breeding program, producing Irish Wolfhounds and Scottish Deerhounds, my colleague at the end of the table has Scottish Deerhounds.
We met.
Oh, yeah, good. That embody breed type, sound temperament, and outstanding health. Thank you, and a special congratulations on your national specialty win.
Thank you very much.
Across the hall in the Kelsey room, they're doing an interview for CKC. Okay, thank you. They're giving me a rough time here. Could I ask Jerry Taylor, president of the Fort Garry Kennel Club, to come up? Founded in Winnipeg in 1919, the Fort Garry Kennel Club is one of the oldest kennel clubs in Canada. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the Fort Garry Kennel Club, which offers a wonderful opportunity to reflect on the club's history and the many important contributions it has made. Throughout the past century, Fort Garry Kennel Club has shown exceptional leadership and dedication to the advancement and promotion of purebred dogs and the expansion of dog shows and performance events. By offering financial assistance, equipment, and club personnel, Fort Garry Kennel Club has made it possible for new clubs to get started in their early years. It continues to support other clubs in Manitoba, as well as the Manitoba Junior Kennel Club and the Kenora District Kennel Club in Ontario. Cross-border.
Yes.
The sponsorship the club has provided during the Manitoba Classic made it possible to expand to include Northwestern Ontario. In recognition of Fort Garry's Kennel Club's enduring and dedicated promotion of purebred dogs and the dog sport, we are pleased to present the Club Recognition Award to the Fort Garry Kennel Club. Accepting on behalf is the club's president, Jerry Taylor.